Hi everybody, this is Jen at Yarn and Y'all, and I just want to take a few minutes to talk to you about Afterthought heels for socks. So there's many different heels that we can do in our socks. There's the traditional flat heel flap and gusset heel. There's the short row heel. You have Catboard I did the sweet tomato heel, and there's a couple other modern ones out there. But the one I'm going to talk to you about today, and that I use fairly often, is going to be the Afterthought heel. So the Afterthought heel, traditionally, you knit the whole tube and then you go back and cut your yarn and put your heel in. But today I'm going to show you how to do it with Forethought. So we're going to plan out where it's going to be. Some advantages to your Afterthought heel. If you're trying to stretch your yarn a little bit, you can use a contrasting yarn for your heel and toe. Helps you stretch your main yarn. And the big one for me is if you have people that you knit socks for, maybe it's you, maybe it's a family member, that wear them out at the heels, they're much easier to replace. Especially when you have a contrast in color, you can just take that old heel out and put a new one in. So let's get down to it. Okay, so let's first talk about the placement of your Afterthought heel. With an Afterthought heel, if you're coming top down, you want to plan your heel placement starting at about 2 inches above where the sock meets the ground or floor when you're walking. And if you're doing toe up, you're going to do it about 2 inches from the back of the heel. And your typical Afterthought heel is going to use half of your stitches. For a deeper heel, you can use more and up to about 2/3. So to start, this is 64 stitches I've got cast on here. And I have my beginning of the round marked, which is my center of my back. So you want, if I've got 64 stitches, I want 32 for my heel, and I want to center that on the back. So I'm going to count over 16 from my marker. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16. And now I'm going to let my main yarn just hang out for a minute. And I'm going to, kind of like we would with a provisional heel or provisional cast on, I am going to knit with a waste yarn. And what you want to look for in your waste yarn is going to be very similar to the provisional cast on. You want something that's not fuzzy. You want something that's high contrast. You want to be able to see it so you can get it out of there. So you can see I've got a pretty good contrast here. So I'm going to go ahead and knit those 32 stitches. And of course, knitting always goes slower when you have a camera on you. As you can see, this would be a pretty short sock, but this is just a little sample ring tube that I started up just for doing this. So there we go. And again, our main yarn is still attached in its regular spot because we're going to be picking it up and working with it again here in just a couple minutes. Okay, so there's my stitch marker, so now I'm halfway, so I got 16 more. And you can just do this one piece of waste yarn and pick up both sides of it. But I prefer, to flip it and purl it back. That way I have the stitches above and below it, each on their own, each on yarn. And it makes it a little more stable for me personally when I am going back and picking up those stitches, which is what we're going to do. Okay. Almost done. I slide that, and then we have got our last stitches here. Oh. Just a few more. And then when we get to the end here of the orange stitches, I am going to turn it back around so I'm back to how I'm supposed to be knitting in the round where everything's facing me. Break that. And then I'm just going to start knitting right into that contrast yarn, that waste yarn, with my main yarn again. And I'm going to go ahead and continue to do the rest of the body of my sock. Okay, so you can see I don't have the whole tube knit, but I have a few rows above my waste yarn to kind of stabilize everything. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go in and take out this waste yarn and put these stitches on needle so we can knit our heel. So, and I brought my tails to the front. That makes it a little bit easier for me. And if you look here, you can see where our waste yarn has come through, and I'm going to use this needle to get this off here first. And I'm going to take these one at a time. So there's a stitch. Let's grab that one. And then we have take that yarn, that waste yarn out of that stitch now. And then we look at our next one, and you can see there is your stitch that you want to pick up and save. So we'll put this needle in there. And then I can pull that one out. And these are still going to hold down here. And then we have, get that out there. And then we have this one. So we're just going to keep going through and picking out stitches as we come to them. Now I will generally do my top and bottom at the same time. That's my preference, so I don't do something silly and pull out a stitch I didn't want to pull out. So I've got 3 there. I'm going to grab my other needle here, and I'm going to grab, where'd you go? That one. And I can pull the waste yarn out of there. And then I'm going to go to the next one. Scoop it on there and pull the waste yarn out. And as you're working these back and forth, you're going to end up with all of your stitches off the waste yarn and on your needle. So pull that one out here. So our next one, the bottom there, is right here. We'll just scoop on through. And you could also use your other double point, because you're going to need 3 double points to do your heel now. You can also use your other double point as your puller needle, just to help you get a hold of things. And you're going to continue that all the way across. And I like doing it with the waste yarn because I don't have to worry about unraveling the whole thing. As long as I've got these yarns in here, they're going to hold my stitches from running down on me. Let's do a couple more. You can see how they're coming off the waist yarn, going onto the needles. So you're just going to continue that all the way across the row. Okay, so our waist yarn is out and our stitches are on 2 of our double points. Now when you pick up your stitches, you will notice that you will not have the same number of stitches on each needle. I have 33 on one, 32 on the other. That is perfectly normal. That happens with this, so what we're going to do is, I know this is my needle with one less, and I am going to scoop down here and pick up one out of the corner to give me an even number of stitches. So there we go. So now we're going to start to knit our heel. Usually an extra stitch or even 2 can be picked up at the corners to close any gaps that you have. My corners, I mean your 2 ends. But we're going to start with, for the first round, I am going to, I've already picked up one there, so I'm just going to go ahead and start knitting. In the first round, we're going to knit evenly. And I'm using my contrast yarn here just because it's what I have. So we're going to grab one here. And I'm going to go ahead and knit across this needle, fixing any twisted stitches as I come to them. Because inevitably, at least I, when I'm picking up the stitches as I've taken them off the waist yarn, am going to twist some. So I'm going to knit across. And okay, here. Oops. Tangled myself up there. And then I'm going to get some off of that one, but I am going to go ahead and pick up one more stitch in here just to tighten things up. And then I'm going to turn, and I'm going to work across my other needle. And so yeah, these are twisted, so I'm going to knit it to the back loop to bring it back where it's supposed to be. And you want to try to keep these needles close together there, because that is the corner of your heel. And this is not ordinarily the needles I would be using with this white yarn, but I wanted to have things visible for you guys. So, and you can see where these are twisted. There's my front left leg and my right is in the back, so I'm just knitting them through the back loop. Or I could sit there and I could flip them around and get them the right way and knit them. But at this point, to me, it's just easier to go through the back loop. That one I must already switched. So just check, otherwise you'll have twisted stitches. So almost done with the first round here. Tail out of the way. Oh. And don't split your yarn. There we go. So your Afterthought heel itself is knit as a pretty standard decreasing heel. You do one row where you knit all the way around even, and then alternate your decreases on your other rows. So, okay, so there's that one. And then I'm going to pick up one in here to tighten this up. Okay, so I have my foundation. So then the next row will be a decrease row where you are going to knit one, tighten up that tail there, slip, slip, knit, knit across to your last 3 stitches, and then knit 2 together, knit 1, and repeat on the other needle. And then you would go back to doing an even round and then a decrease round until you get the heel the size you want. Okay, so you can see our heels coming together here. We got the decreases going with the knit 1, slip, slip, knit at the beginning of the row, and then the knit 2 together, knit 1 on the opposite end of the needle on every other row, and then you do an even row. So you can see that the heels are starting to come together here. So you're just going to continue with that until you get to your desired number of stitches. For me, that's usually 8 or 10 stitches on each needle, depending on who I'm making it for and what size socks. And then you would Kitchener those stitches together, and your heel is all set. Now, if you get to a time when you want to replace this heel, you would very simply cut in your Kitchener, is how I do it, and then unravel until you get down, and then pick up these live stitches as you're going and knit a new heel. So that is an Afterthought heel with Forethought. Thank you.